U.S. Energy Secretary Christopher Wright flew to Warsaw to sign the deal with Poland's president, and the Energy Secretary joins us to talk about that, oil and gas, and even a massive power outage hitting Europe much of today. We're going to hit on all that, but we began the interview by asking about the impact of jobs from this nuclear power deal.
Nuclear deals are large in scale, and they're long in time frame. This will bind the U.S. and Poland together through the rest of this century. But in the scale of this deal, it's tens of billions of dollars, many tens of thousands of jobs in the United States. You mentioned in Pennsylvania, but the supply chain is spread around many states. It's tens of thousands of jobs in Poland. And maybe more importantly, it's long-term, affordable, reliable, secure energy for the citizens of Poland, and it likely launches a partnership between the United States and a bunch of supply chain companies in Poland to build other such reactors throughout Central Europe or elsewhere in Europe.
You know, we've talked a lot about a nuclear renaissance here, still kind of waiting for that. To your point, it take a long time. Today, there was a massive power outage in Spain and Portugal. Do you feel like there's a growing appetite for more U.S. exported energy, whether that's LNG or whether that's nuclear power or whatever it is, across Europe and the world, when they just realize we're going to need a lot of power from all different types of sources?
Exactly. It's very sad to see what's happened to Portugal and Spain and so many people there. But, you know, when you hitch your wagon to the weather, it's just a risky endeavor. And in the best, and that's in the worst case, but even in the standard operating conditions, it's just driven up the price of energy so much in Europe. Brian, one of the things I said in my speech today to the Central European nations was to point out that 15 years ago, energy wasn't that much more expensive in Europe than it was in the United States, and our economies were roughly the same size, 25% of global GDP. And if you look at that today, the U.S. has gone up to 28%, and Europe has shrunk to 18%. That's a pretty dramatic divergence in 15 years. And I think the biggest driver of that by far is just getting energy wrong. If you choose to have expensive, unreliable energy, you can't have a thriving economy, and you reduce the life opportunities for your citizenship. It's a choice, but it's a bad choice.
Well, the interesting thing about this deal, there's many interesting things, but the reactor that's being built, it's called an AP1000. It's built by Westinghouse. They're sort of near Pittsburgh area. So a very American company, 130 plus years old. These reactors are used in a lot of other countries. There are two operating in Georgia in the United States, which came in, they were slow, they were over budget. So how do we sell the nuclear story to the United States when you got a skeptical public that says, well, listen, we built that nuclear plant in Georgia, but it was super expensive and super late. How do we prevent that from stalling out other projects?
Yes, Brian. I mean, that's the growing pains of standing up an industry that's basically been static for decades with very little activity going on in it. So the one upside is Vogtle 4, the last of the reactors, was built much faster and less expensive than Vogtle 3. So we saw sort of in the U.S. sort of, you know, first of a kind and second of a kind. I think it's clear that as this supply chain stands up, the speed and cost of these things will improve dramatically. But, you know, not building big reactors for 3 or 4 decades, that comes at a cost. That comes at a cost. We talked about that quite a bit here in Poland as well. There'll be 3 of these reactors built here. I think there'll be a follow-on 3 that'll follow immediately after them here in Poland, and then probably many more in other places in Europe. So we've simply got to get the nuclear machine in gear again. That'll drive costs down, and that'll make schedule and timing a lot better.